Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Sitting Ovation, a podcast about who the interesting people who work in theater are, what they do, and why they do it. We're your hosts, Bailey Sheehan,
Elizabeth Miller,
and Matt Ferragasso.
We'd like to welcome you to our show, but before we get started, we'd like to take this opportunity to respectfully acknowledge that we are hosting this podcast from the traditional lands of the Lenni Lenape people, and we pay our respects to elders both past and present.
Today, you'll be getting to know Kashi Johnson, chairperson and professor here with us at Lehigh University. Who is Kashi? What does she do and why does she do it? Let's find out. So Kashi, tell us about your journey into theater.
My journey into theater. Well, I think that there is a distant and an immediate story. I always grew up going to theater. I was reflecting the other day that I saw a lot of off-Broadway. I grew up in New York, native New Yorker, shout out to the city. And I remember seeing lots of different kinds of eclectic things when I was growing up. Mario Van Peebles had a show, a one-man show. I can't remember the title. It involved a stork, though. I remember that. And my sister, right? My sister and I used to be dragged to these plays that my parents used to go to. And my sister was cracking the gum really hard. Crack, crack, crack. And so he stopped the show and he said, "Little girl, you're going to have to," he said something like, "You're going to have to stop doing that." And in that moment, it was seared in my brain. One, the power of being able to stop what you're doing and stop and talk to my sister and correct her. I thought that was great. And it was just like, I had just little pings in my life of experiences like that when it comes to theater. So fast forward to going to Lehigh University as an undergrad. I went to Lehigh. I came in as a computer science engineering major. I went to a math and science high school. I was on a trajectory to make money. I had no clue how to do that, but I thought computer science degree from Lehigh would get me there. And after my first semester at college, where I received a 1.1 GPA cumulative out of a 4.0, I'll say that again. I received a 1.1 out of a 4.0. Well, we knew things were going to be interesting for me in college for the next couple of years, and it was. And it wasn't until I was academically dropped. I had to petition to get back in. I thought I would become a sociologist. Shout out to sociologists, but I just can't write papers like that. I don't. So it came down to theater because one day my mother said, we were trying to decide what my major would be, and we were poring over my transcripts. Everything looked bleak, and she found Theater 11 taught by Professor Pam Pepper. Shout out Pam Pepper. And she said, "Well, what about this acting class? You got an A- in this. Why don't you?" And I thought, "Do theater at Lehigh? Are you kidding, lady? Do you know what that means?" But I was looking very short term, obviously, just thinking about my immediate circle and their reaction instead of my life and how I could be successful. And so I spent the rest of that break. I think it was a break, trying to figure out what I would do. And I decided to go with theater because I was taking a class with another theater class at the time with Professor Jeffrey Millett. May he rest in peace. And I was working in the scene design class. Bailey, you'll appreciate this. I still have a scar to this day from the X-Acto knife. I'm making Play-Doh. I'm trying to do this midsummer set. I'm cutting up stuff. It's 4:00 in the morning. And I thought to myself, if I could have this much fun and getting a grade and, there's something to this and I want to explore it more. And, little did I know just exactly what was meant when people say theater is the whole world, and so I went down the rabbit hole and I thought it was the early 90s. So I thought I was going to be the next Spike Lee. I was all into directing, didn't know what that was, but I was taking the classes and stuff. I just knew Spike Lee, And so as you all know, when you go into theater, you pick up whatever people introduce to you, you're doing a little bit. So I was then doing assistant stage managing before Pam Pepper, same name again, says, we have a break. Why don't you go down and audition for Gus's play? He's looking for actors for Endgame. I'm like, what is Endgame? I'm just trying to get my credits. I've just started this theater major, lady. I have a very bad GPA. What are you setting me up for? And I said, no, I'm okay. Okay. I'm just going to stay here, be assistant stage manager. She demanded that I go down and audition. And I did. And I got the lead role. I didn't know what was happening or why. And if anyone is a theater
Wow.
aficionado and knows theater, Samuel Beckett, you know that Endgame is not for the faint of heart, mind, or soul. But Gus Reaper, as my director, had a vision. And all I knew was, I don't know what's, I felt like Alice in Wonderland. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And when it was all said and done, the bug had bit me. I was in this world. I was trying to figure it out. And then I started to make friends, true theater family. And I'm a camp kid. I grew up going to camp for years and years. So it just felt like camp, except we didn't do sleepovers. It just felt the same way. So all of that was the question about how did I start with theater? I hope that was what the question was.
Yes.
Yeah,
You've answered every
okay.
question we've had. Yeah.
So you didn't have any performance before in college?
No. Well, I was a cheerleader. My big sister was amazing. My sister Crystal, I've already mentioned her twice. And she's 3 years older than me. And I mean, growing up, she was the personification of everything I always wanted to be. Where I am not fast as a runner, she was like Flojo. Where I can't even do a cartwheel to this day. My sister was like Dominique Dawes flipping through the sky. She could just do it all. Dance, break, you name it. My sister could do it. And so she was always so wonderful because she always let me come along. And so I always, growing up, had my face pressed up against the glass, never quite thinking, I can't wait for that to be me. I never thought that. I just really like looking and watching and just being in the room. There's something about that as a theater artist. You just enjoy the making of it, the doing of it, right? So that's
Yeah,
what it was,
100%.
right? Yeah. So that's what it was for me. And then later on, I was terrified auditioning for Gus and doing the play in the beginning, but then I just realized it was a different experience of this world, and it was cool. So.
And did your GPA improve from there?
I went from a 1.1. I graduated. It's very hard to pull up your cumulative GPA for those people that don't know when you start so poorly. It's like a batting average, I guess, in baseball. The stronger you start out the gate, the better you can, your stats are. So I did well enough that I graduated from Lehigh with a 2.8, which was just enough to get me into graduate school. See, that's what it is. It was like just enough to get to that next step. I didn't know it at the time. I just started getting A's. I just started succeeding in theater classes. Not all A's. That scene design class, I think I got a B.
What was that next step for you? Where did you go to grad school?
University of Pittsburgh. I did the ERTA auditions. I felt like I was recruited like a athlete for graduate acting program, flown around the country to different programs. And Pitt really resonated with me because the person who was the head of the program was committed to recruiting a diverse class. She had eight slots to fill, and she wanted to make it diverse, and not diverse with just me diversifying as one person, but she was true to her word. Sarah Barker. There were three of us, three African American students out of a class of 8, and that showed me a lot because she was a woman of her word, and she understood that there were all kinds of challenges and successes and wonderful experiences to be had by fully seeing and supporting young actors as we were at the time, all of us. And what's really cool is this quarantine has put the 7 of us back in contact. So we had our first 20-year reunion. Everybody's kids coming on and everything. It was the most amazing gift because it was truly built on something she started. So I did Pitt because of that. And it was different than Lehigh, being in Pittsburgh with the Dirty O and, the Steelers. I became a Steelers fan for years. You don't live in Pittsburgh and not do that.
So what brought you came back to Lehigh? Was there to be an instructor? Was there any
Well, I
steps
was
in
in my
between?
late 20s by then, experiencing life and going through crappy relationships. So I mean, I was working professionally in the city and doing well enough, but stay in touch with your professors. You never know where the next opportunity lies. And that name you've now heard twice mentioned, I'll mention again, Pam Pepper, who was then the chair of the Department of Theater, reached out because the department was doing a Raisin in the Sun. She knew I had done my MFA. She knew that I was a teacher in Pittsburgh teaching. I taught at Pitt. I taught at Point Park Conservatory, Duquesne University. I was adjuncting a lot of places. So she invited me to be a visiting professor at Lehigh and to perform the role of Mama in a Raisin in the Sun, spring of 1999. And so I left bad relationships in Pittsburgh. My mom came and got me. Late 20s, still happy. We're back across the state. And I kind of have been in the Lehigh Valley ever since. My tenure track position was being sought the same semester I was visiting. So I had to put my hat in the ring and compete nationally. But I was having a good, strong audition with a semester visiting. So I made the most of it and was awarded the tenure track position. And so I started here 20 years ago on the faculty.
in
That's
2000.
amazing.
So your first year was 2000 as the tenure track role?
Well, I came in as a visiting in 99. Look, I'm doing like the calendar in 99. And then I joined the faculty officially in the fall. So still in the fall of 99 is when I started teaching officially.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
I love thinking about it's scary to think. Isn't it crazy to think that 2000 was 20 years ago? Are you any?
Yes.
No, you're not old enough, Bailey. Right? She's just like, I don't know.
I was 8 years old at the turn of the.
Wow.
That's funny. Yeah, no, the 80s are still 20 years ago to me.
Yeah.
It's humbling. I look at movies on Netflix and I see the date it was, and it's just constantly blowing my mind. But I'm dating myself. I'm sorry. Okay.
So what do you do at Lehigh now? How has your evolution at Lehigh changed?
Let me answer that professionally. I am the chair of the Department of Theater. I'm a full professor, proud to be. I teach performance classes, direct plays for the stage. My area of specific expertise is hip hop theater pedagogy. That means the teaching of hip hop theater. I've been doing that for 12 years. So this is my second year chairing. Corona has forever made this experience memorable. That's what I tell myself every day. We're making memories right now, And so I got some hats and I wear them all. And sometimes I throw them all on the floor.
I'm really interested in your work with hip hop theater pedagogy. I'm so interested in how that started, how that kind of evolved.
How did it start? The narrative is pretty simple. When I give workshops and talks around the country now about it, it starts, I imagine smoke comes up behind me and it says, I was in the room when hip hop was being born, kid. I grew up in New York City in the early 70s. And so when hip hop was coming out, I tell my students, it was like one day in third grade, I went to school. And when I came home, because I live in Queens, but I always went to school in Manhattan. So I rode the train for like 2 hours, coming and going to and from school. This is a whole culture for kids like me. And when I came home from school, everybody was doing hip hop one day. All of my friends down the block, around the corner, my cousins, everybody was a crew. They were breakdancing, graffiti. Who knew they had these talents? By the end of the week, my sisters, my cousins, and we had our own crew. We were the PYTs, patterned after who, Elizabeth? Michael Jackson.
Pretty
Young
Thing.
Things. We
Pretty
were the
Young
PYTs.
Thing.
Okay, sorry, you can relax again, Elizabeth. So we had our own little rap crew. And that's how it started. I fell in love with hip hop by doing hip hop. Same way I like to teach it now. We don't just study hip hop, we do it. We are practitioners of it. And as I journeyed through discovering my love for theater and the world of theater and my joy for teaching and coming to Lehigh, once I got tenure, which is the permanence of this position to continue to expand and grow. Someone said to me one day, now you can do what you want. And I didn't know what they meant by that because I know I couldn't just run around just, hey, Lehigh, just doing what. But I knew I was going to try to figure out what did they mean I could do whatever I want. And so when the opportunity presented itself to kind of figure out a little bit more, I took that cue to mean take leaps of faith towards things that you want to do. Don't be so fearful to do the right thing because now that tenure is achieved, you have to continue to grow as a scholar and an artist. And so hip hop seemed right for me. It didn't feel like work. That's always a good thing for me. Students, seriously, if it feels like work, but the days you could do things and it just flies by and it's just for the love of it, you are working so hard, but it just doesn't feel that way. So hip hop theater for me was in that vein. I had been attending shows in New York at the Hip Hop Theater Festival for years. Lehigh had brought several artists to campus like Danny Hock, Sarah Jones, the Rennie Harris Pure Movement dance company. Deborah Sakarakis, the then Zollner artistic director, had her eye on hip hop theater 20 years ago. And so it was wonderful. I didn't always have to go out of town to see it. I could sometimes just go down to the Baker stage and check it out too. So I say that all to say it all started to coalesce. And so Lehigh kept giving me opportunities to figure this out. As things changed, the Lehigh calendar changed. In the first slot, now I'm talking to the three of you like we're in a department meeting. The first slot in 2006 came up with a real short rehearsal window. It was like 4 weeks. I don't know why, and I don't know how. And everybody's saying, what kind of play can we do in a month? What's going to happen? I said, let's not do a play. Let's do a hip hop theater festival. Everybody nodded their head like that. And then they left me to it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I had never, everybody just said, go ahead, Kashi. And so we did a 2-week festival. Nobody told me. Gus, I would go to Gus and say, Gus, tell me, what can't I do? He said, you tell me what you want to do. And that was powerful. We exploded the joint for 2 weeks. It was the Say Word Hip Hop Theater Festival in 2006. And it was transformative. I had to start a campaign and going around Lehigh's campus, demystifying what hip hop was and what I believed it to be, the powerful art form that it was for empowering self-expression. No, we're not coming in and have to go and debunk all of the horrible stereotypes about the culture that I don't want to get into. But instead, I saw it as a rebranding of the culture. And so people donated and contributed. And I think a lot of folks thought it was a one-off. I think I even thought it was a one-off until the festival was over and a young freshman named Charles Choice, backpack hip hop kid from Brooklyn, well accomplished. I'll never forget. Love Charles. Talk to him to this day. He came up to me. He said, that festival was dope. Now what are we going to do?
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
That's a part of my story because he caught me. I just thought he was going to say, good job and go away. And so I realized that. And the other part of the story that culminates in this class coming to be in all of my journey is that one of the artists that I was referencing earlier, Danny Hock, if you Google him, Hock, H-O-C-H, Danny Hock, he's an accomplished actor, but he is one of the co-founders of the Hip Hop Theater Festival. And Deborah Sakarakis brought him to Lehigh to perform his one-man show, right? Did you see it, Elizabeth?
I probably did. Yeah, I think so.
And I was working in my office one night, right, as we often do in theater, way past the hours I was working, and somebody walked by and they saw my door open. So they said, "Hey, you staying to go see Danny Hawk?" Because they knew I liked hip hop and they knew he was coming. I didn't know that. So I played it off. I was like, "Oh yeah, hip hop, I'm coming down there." And so I went. And when I learned that he was a white man doing hip hop, I stopped. I'll honestly tell you, because I sat there with the thing. I was, "Oh, who's he gonna teach me about hip hop?" I get chills to this day when I think of how brilliant a performer this man is. He spoke my entire life story and experience. He was hip hop culture manifest on stage. There was no question of race. There was no question of lived experience. He did live that experience, and that's what he was able to reflect back to me. So much so that when he gave a workshop the next day, I waited around after the students met with him. He gave a great workshop. Everybody's loving it. And I'm waiting quietly, because I had one question for him. I just wanted to ask him just one question. Finally, the last student left. And I was like, "Mr. Hawk, I love this. This was great. How can I be down?" And I'll never forget. He looked, because I wanted to be down with the Hip Hop Theater Festival. I wanted to hitch my wagon to what they were doing. But I remember he stopped and he looked at me and he looked around, and we were in 145, right? Which is like a nice opulent, kind of, and he looked around and he looked all around and he looked back at me and said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And in that moment, it wasn't a question that he was asking me to have an answer to. Because if you know hip hop culture, you know the expression and the ethos, which is, it ain't where you from, it's where you're at. And in that moment, he spoke to me singularly on that level. I felt that frequency and I was charged. So between Charles talk about what's next and Danny Hawk asking me what was I doing here, it was clear. You can do what you want, all of that stuff. And so I went to the safest place I know. One of the safest places I know is my classroom. And that's where we started in the spring of 2007 with the first generation. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know who wanted to do hip hop theater at Lehigh. 31 Lehigh students signed up. I put no limits on it. I didn't know what I was doing. 31 signed up. That never happened again, by the way. I have limits. But I say that all to say it was a wonderful just mix of me just taking leaps of faith and trying to listen and do what doesn't feel like work. It feels like joy.
Yes. Yes.
That's a powerful story. That's
Thank you for asking me to tell it. I don't think I've ever told it quite in that way. That's cool.
I know the podcast is fun because you can interview however you want.
And I just want to throw in, Kashi, that we were able to witness the hip hop festival online this past spring in my home, which was magical because I'm always working over in Baker Hall when you're doing your show over in Diamond. So I always have to miss it. But this year I was able to sit down and my kids came in into the room and sat down and we all watched it together. And my daughter, this is a pitch to admission, so listen up, everybody. My daughter, who is a junior in high school, we hope that she'll get into Lehigh someday. And one of the first classes she wants to sign up is with you. She's definitely like, I got to get into that class.
Yes.
So, inspiration already.
That is gratifying and scary because I remember her. But they keep growing, don't they? So wow, let's make that landmark happen. We'll see what.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow, that's awesome.
While we're on a moment of fangirling over Kashi here, so my first year working at Lehigh was the year of Act Like You Know, the 10-year anniversary.
Oh.
So my first experience of Act Like You Know was the big full-scale production, and I consider myself so grateful and so fortunate to have you as a colleague and get to work with you on the daily, because Act Like You Know 10.0, I worked on it. I was in the production meetings. I mean, that was such an awesome experience to work with because it was so collaborative from cast to crew. It never felt like there was a hierarchy or any structure. It was like we're all working towards the same goal, which was incredible. And then sitting in the audience on opening night, I remember sitting there and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Did the students write this? Is this the students' work? And it was so phenomenal that I remember sitting there and I was like, I'm going to see if I can renew my contract at Lehigh for another year. Because at that point, I was kind of temporary. This is where I want to be. I
Woo!
want to be somewhere where the students are allowed to say these things. They're encouraged to say these things.
Mm.
You say all the time, speak your truth. And that's, you don't just say that as like an inspirational message. You really live it and, make your students
I
live it
demand it.
in front of everyone. And it's phenomenal. It's definitely one of the reasons why I stay at
Wow, I
Lehigh.
didn't know
It's
that,
just,
Bailey.
yeah.
Wow. Wow, I didn't know that, and I'm so happy that that was truly a what we did was after 10 years of teaching the class, we realized we were at 10 years, and so we might create a show to put in the season fully, and it was a remix of performances from all 10 years, selected and pieced back together, but fully supported. I mean, whoa, to show the magic of collaboration with theater. We had smoke, we had video, we had costumes. We had real costumes. We had the class times 10 for the 10th year, and the love that the department, Act Like You Know is not Kashi's just, it exists. And the work that I'm able to do nationally with all of this only is because the department has always believed in it. And like you said, always supported students speaking their truth to power. If we don't do it on stage, where will it get done?
Well, and that's the magic of it, you know? I'm glad that you bring that vision every year and it hasn't just fallen by the wayside. You know, I walked into the 10-year anniversary show and I just remember I came down on stage and I was talking to you and the energy in that space is so electric and so vibrant. It resonates so widely and it's so honest.
Mm.
It's just kind of an experience that you don't quite know how to process because you're just in it, and it's kind of amazing. And so
I think I remember
I
that
just sit in
day.
awe.
As you're speaking, I'm like, I think I remember when we were standing there on stage talking. Anyway, what beautiful
Yeah.
memories.
My turn.
Your turn, Matt.
Sorry.
So no. I don't. I want to fangirl too. Kashi and I've been here for 7 years, and one of our first experiences together was she asked me to be on stage with her or in a show she directed.
Mhm. Which show, Matt?
That would have been God of Carnage. You were fantastic to work with, a fantastic director. To me, you were like an actor's director, right? That comes from you being an actor, but you were always so willing to work with me and my schedule, and you were just so easy to work with as an actor and help me get to places I wanted to go and do all these things. And specifically, so Act Like You Know 10, I'm going to get back to that.
Mhm.
That was the first one I've ever had the chance to see because you always do it on a Sunday when we typically strike a black box show. So I never had the opportunity to go see an Act Like You Know show. And so that was my first experience with that whole thing. And I'm getting goosebumps now, sitting in the audience, watching these college kids do their thing with the whole thing. It blew my mind. It made me appreciate so many things so much more. It gave me feelings and goosebumps for days. And it was just such an awesome thing to see finally. Having the relationship that we have prior to that was just like, it was such a cool mix of, I know Kashi and we have this personal relationship. Look at this, her students and the things she does and teaches and emboldens and empowers. And it was an awesome experience.
Thank you. I didn't know that you never saw it, Matt.
Yeah, it was always on a Sunday, and we
Matt,
always
you theater folk with your working with your. I guess people assume that you get to see everything, huh? And meanwhile,
They
yeah.
do. They really do. So I'm going to segue from that over to now you've done this marvelous, amazing thing, or you're doing rather, not done, but doing with your hip hop pedagogy.
Mhm.
What goals do you still have for your theater career? You've achieved tenure and are a full professor. You're chairperson of the department. You've got this amazing hip hop program. What's out there in the future?
Yeah, what is out there? I think I'm gonna drop a mixtape album.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of not. Okay, so really
Yeah,
what I'm trying to do is two
don't
things.
joke.
Well, now
No,
you've
You
said
just
I
it.
willed
just
it into
wanted
the
to
world.
Now
see.
you've said it. It's recorded.
What I want to do is actually is the anti-book. That's what I've been calling it because there is a request, there is a growing attention towards putting it down in a book, right? My act like you know, all of the different techniques, and I want to do. I've published it on the course. I've published on my work in several ways. Most notably to be a part of the Black Acting Methods Critical Approaches book, which is like the number one selling theater book in the country right now.
Hell yeah.
Wow,
Yes.
phenomenal.
And so, you know, I'm vibrating on levels that have given me the opportunity to think outwardly, not so much at Lehigh. And all of the work I'm doing with the studio is moving me towards a book or something like it. So I've been talking to the studio director about. I'll stop. I'll stop. He's doing some stuff, so we should let him do that because
We can let him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
let him
Yeah.
do that and then pick up again. We can.
yeah. I'm not trying to out you, honey, but I told you I was taping. Okay, so where should I go back from? What was I say?
I was talking to a studio director, is about where you dropped off.
Okay. Oh yeah, I was talking to Sherelle Luckett, who is the director of the studio, about my plans to do this anti-book, and she is completely supportive. Mind you, she is a prolific author with like 5 books to her credit, real books. But I'm like, I'm gonna do the anti-book. So if that shows up in like, you know, video chapters where I'm freestyle rhyming, or, you know, the fact that the three of you actually didn't just keel over laughing and actually seems kind of perplexed and intrigued by it actually now makes me feel like, oh boy, now maybe I really should try, you know. So I am looking to put it down and record this work in some way that again doesn't make me feel like I'm writing a book, but if I sneak up on it, that would be important. And continuing to work with the Black Acting Methods Studio to share the techniques and the things that I've learned and created over time with a larger audience. In the past couple of years, I've been looking at ways to, you know, you as one person, I can't teach every class there is across the country, but there are different ways to create coursework and content so people can, as we all know, engage asynchronously now. So I'm looking into doing that through the studio. Um, I'm really I'm really grateful to be an artistic associate of such a nationally recognized platform and educational outlet like the Black Acting Method Studio. I've worked throughout this entire summer. There's been some serious workshops and webinars, and you know, we're now more and more demand it seems than ever, given uh, this moment the country finds itself in with the racial reckoning among other things. So I'm grateful for the work and the exposure, just trying to balance it all with the leading the department. You know, usually when people start to chair or something like that, everything else shuts off, and I'm like, no, not in my life. Now it's heating up, so let me just figure out how to balance it all, because when will you have these blessings again? I don't know.
So now you've talked about, you've acted, you've directed, you have this hip hop, you're doing all these different things. And this might be a hard question to answer, but what is your favorite aspect of theater? Is it the hip hop work? Is it the directing? I mean, you were on stage a couple years ago. You were in Gem of the Ocean not too long ago.
Dog act.
Dog act. That's
Oh,
right.
yeah. You're so good in that.
I mean, right. You're still doing it all. So do you have a preference on where you are in the world as long as you're doing it?
I just love, I love creating new. I think I chase the dragon like we all do as theater artists, in terms of that one show or that one experience that just sealed the deal. And they call it like getting bitten by the acting bug when you finally just keep on. But it's theater. It's something about the world. And I've been chasing that feeling that I got in Pam's first acting class for, and will continue to do it until, I don't know. Just sitting in a dark theater brings me immense peace. With a ghost light. Yeah, I don't want to be completely dark. But, just like, a theater either in the middle of having already done, anticipating the making of something new. It's just my sweet spot. And I just as the years have gone by, I realized I don't ever have to give it up. I just have to keep on finding ways to engage the joy. Sometimes it's not joyful and it wasn't there. And you go on to the next opportunity. And sometimes it is just an overabundance of unexpected joy. So, in for a penny, in for a pound.
Awesome.
So we know why you love theater so much. If you weren't in theater, what might you be doing? Is that something you ever thought about?
Well, when I had the pre-interview, that was one of the first times I and it made me think, but I got it. Again, going with the ethos of something that doesn't feel like work that I could give a lot of time to, I would definitely be a video content creator / digital editor. It's the only other thing I could whip out some movies and some videos and learn some tricks. I'm always trying to hack something learn something for free that I can figure out. So my husband and I met online, and that's not the point, but we bonded over the fact that we both tended to have some pretty savvy computer usage. I'll leave it at that. We did things similarly, and I really enjoy engaging technology and trying to design and do things like that. It calms me and it doesn't feel like work. So that's probably what I would do. That or hair.
And we have an interesting crossover with your two loves there, kind of coming up with Seen and Heard of a little bit of theater, a little bit of editing happening. Do you want to talk about that project a little bit?
Well, you're working on it with me, Bailey.
I sure am.
When we last met, well, I'll start by saying, yes, Seen and Heard is one of the digital projects the Department of Theater is mounting this year in our rebooted season. We are not doing a traditional theater season. We are doing a season called Reboot the Future. And so this podcast series is our first project out the gate. So proud of it. You guys are doing amazing. And we have some other projects roaring to life this semester. Seen and Heard is one of them. And what it is a digital love letter to Black women. Now, quite honestly, the reason why it's so specific is because, again, when I was working through this summer, working really hard with the Black Acting Methods Studio, but even harder with our department, Zooming all the time, trying to brainstorm what we were going to do, I said, I can't direct a normal play this year. What's the one thing that would bring me some kind of solace, some kind of supportive energy, and that I could do work in, but not feel so taxed, so oppressed by it. And so that's where the idea came to me, given, the state of the world and the Black woman's place in it. I have always used or tried to use my work to give me strength and sanity and hope. So I thought of Seen and Heard as a great way to just invite Black women to be seen and heard in whatever ways they wanted to connect with each other in the spirit of love. And it's a digital love letter because we are all being safe. I am a very collaborative person. That's my nature. And because, as you all know, we're in Zoom world now and we're just accessing virtually, everyone's around and available. And I knew that, but I kind of didn't think of that when I was inviting people to participate in this project, because when I last spoke to my creative team 2 weeks ago, I told everybody 25 people. That's it. That's all we got. And now,
what are we up to now?
We are at, I can't even say it. I will say it. We're at 45. It's a hard 45. There is no more.
I thought it was a hard 35.
45. Because what I did was I sent out the call, and then, there's people that are stragglers. There are people that just don't read, whatever. But when they did show up, a lot of these women said they needed to do this more than me asking them to. And who am I to say, here's the invitation and take it back? So honestly, I heard that because we all know what it means to need connection right now in this time. So seen and heard is people have a deadline. I figured out how to communicate with the 45. We've all met on Zoom. My family is involved. I have dear friends who are professional performers involved, Lehigh faculty, Lehigh students, women from the community, young, old, giving all kinds of stories, wisdom. And I'm telling them, like a love letter, love comes in all forms. So it will reflect the gamut, I hope. As soon as Bailey and I edit it.
So stay tuned for that, everyone. It's going to be a really awesome project. I'm really looking. Some of the content that's already been pouring in has been incredible. Yeah. So it's going to be
an embarrassment of riches. That's what we're going to have. We'll just have to figure it out.
Yeah. You want to dramatic piano us in, or?
Yeah, we're here. Dramatic piano.
I think this is my tagline now.
I think this is all you. Yeah, go.
So, what does the world without art look like to you?
There is no world without art. My mind went to something very dystopian and very bleak. But then it went to the idea that we find beauty and art in everything. There is no way to remove what we can attach that value to when we find value in it. A leaf in a corner is art, if you see it as such. Someone speaking your name in a way that compels you to emotion is art. How can that ever be taken away? So I think that I believe we can't be without it. I certainly wouldn't want to be without it. And yeah, I'm drawn to those types of things, but I am only drawn like dystopian stories. That's all that seems to come out now is post-apocalyptic movies. But I love them because I'm always looking for the humanity and the hope and the fight against the, perceived downfall of it all. I always love that narrative. I follow it again and again because that's how I live my life as an artist, believing that hope and understanding and faith in something can overcome insurmountable odds. That's why I do act like at Lehigh University. I do it for my students, but I also selfishly do it for myself. We all need it. Why did the music stop? I really was feeling
the dramatic piano.
Bring it back in.
Wow, thank you.
I think that kind of goes
I agree.
really nicely into one of our other questions that we have for you. And this is one that as Kashi Johnson, as we all know, what legacy do you want to leave behind? You're the queen of legacy and feeling the importance of that and making our stamp in the world. So how do you want to impact the world?
I want to impact the world by continuing to be an example of the personification of hip hop, which is making something out of nothing. I remember when I started doing hip hop theater at Lehigh, I said, I want to make Lehigh an anomaly for hip hop. And sure enough, 12 years later, people kind of don't know Lehigh, but they know something kind of happens there with hip hop. I have more work to do. to really iron that out. But at the end of the day, when drilling down to it, if people know that you can create spaces for people to speak truth to power uh, deliberately with love and intention, you will galvanize support, you will grow audiences, you will grow community. And before you know it, you will transform and affect change. That's what I feel like Act Like You Know has been able to do and will continue to do. That's why I do the work. But if people know that, I like to consider myself like a Harriet Tubman figure at Lehigh, particularly for Black and Latino students at Lehigh for 20 years. Let's be real. Lehigh can be a stifling environment. But Harriet Tubman, she ran that underground. She did a lot of stuff. She was a spy. Did you know that? She was a spy. Drunk History. Watch Drunk History. Harriet Tubman episodes are very good.
I am a fan of that
Yeah,
show.
watch the Harriet Tubman episode, Matt. Please do. But she, I always tell my students, all of my students, not just my Black students, I always tell them Harriet Tubman, she had a gun, right? Because there wasn't nobody getting left behind. And that's kind of how we will teach acting classes. Matt knows I direct a play. We're all going, whether you want to go or not. We're all going to go. And so I want to be known as the woman who held space for people to make it through. And I am an example of that, having made it through Lehigh and seeing it as fertile ground to continue to hold space for others.
That's so awesome. And you're doing it, you're making
Until
it happen.
they just knock me down in the hallway and say, "Get out the way, lady." I'll be like, "Oh, but I'm hip hop."
I was gonna say,
You're poking people with the cane.
Get out of here! I'm hip hop. The kid's gonna be on holograms floating around.
Right.
But nobody's gonna tell me to retire. Hip hop does not have an expiration date, so we'll just have to work it out. I don't know. This was so much fun. Can we do this like every week? I just want to come back and.
This is what we do every week. Between the three of us, we just chat and have a great time
All the time.
All of our meetings run like an hour over because we're just like having such a great time.
No, it's cool. It's very cool.
So I want to ask a little bit about the phrase like speak your truth and know your truth. For our audience that may be unfamiliar, can you go a little bit into like what that means?
Well, I actually have and I'm not trying to plug myself, but I have a TEDx talk that actually drills down to how I came to realize that that was the crux of what my work as a hip hop theater teacher was about. Hip hop is founded, like I said, it's a culture that was born out of nothing. A culture of Black and Latino youth, mainly situated in the Bronx, New York. We're living in burnt out communities that were not being supported. There was no prospect for employment. It was very bleak. Drugs and violence were very high. At the end of the 60s in New York City, there was a huge gang culture. There was a lot wrong, and there were not many spaces and opportunities for young brown and Black people like me. And so hip hop was created. It was a convergence of opportunities, and I won't get into the specifics, but suffice it to say that when the culture emerged, all of that was able to be channeled into something that was empowering. People were given a platform to speak about the injustice of the police brutality and the burnings of the buildings and the way they couldn't get jobs or be let into the nightclubs down in the city because of how they looked. They had a platform to express their frustrations, not just on the microphone, but how they moved their bodies on the floor. And instead of fighting and doing gang violence, it was now battling through dance. It was battling through visual media. Hip hop was the opportunity to say, I'm here, I matter, I have a voice, and I have power. So much so I'll reinvent myself. I'll rename myself. Yesterday I was Kashi. Today I am MC. Cherry Love. That was my name. Don't ask me why. I don't. My father hated it. I didn't want to say it. I was like, God, do I say it? I'll say it.
We'll save it for the blooper reel. Don't worry, we won't. We won't.
So, but I say that all to say that that the idea is firmly grounded in what it was founded on. People think hip hop started with with MCing all of a sudden, the Pillsbury Doughboy rapping on Saturday morning, and it wasn't that. It was anything but that for a very long time. It was a long time before hip hop became commercialized and seen as a money making entity, and where it is now. When it began and in the origins, it was about creating a space for people who were marginalized to speak truth to power, to party and gather and be validated. And so that's what that means. And that's the tenet that I use for the class. Whatever performance projects they do, hip hop knows if you're being authentic. You know what I mean? Sure, Cardi B is a persona, but there is an authenticity to her existence that is instantly hip hop, and people know it. It's the same thing I bring to my class. And so as an acting teacher, I'm just like a glorified BS meter. As a hip hop person, I'm a glorified, and if you are being authentic, respect will be given. And if you're not, everybody's like kids. You know how kids just know if you're being true or not? They're
Yeah.
the same kind of thing. They'll watch it, but they won't accept it. So I don't know what the original question was, but I hope that
No, that journey was worth it. Wherever
it was speak your truth. What speak your truth, man? That's perfect. That's perfect.
I'll ask the next question.
Okay.
Because I can tie it right in. I do this all the time, right? Constructing sets and everything. It's funny. Now when I go see a show, the first thing I do is I spend the first 10 minutes of the show just looking at the set, right? I'm just like, how did they do this? What's going on here? I remember a couple of years ago, I went to see a show off Broadway. All the way, stage left, on the very top, the crown molding was ever so slightly askewed. But do you know what I paid attention to the entire show? Was that piece of crown molding? Anyway, so... Kashi, how does working in the arts change your perspective of art when you see a show?
Oh, I just love to be a fan of good stuff now. I love to be transported. We're all looking for that in this quarantine time. That extra bit, I think, of just permission to not be here. And I love that I don't think I've become judgmental. As I've grown in craft and in the field, and as a person, gotten older, I just appreciate the wonder that much more. I appreciate when I recognize it and I see it and I'm gratified. I just am so sad that Lovecraft Country is over. If anybody, shameless plug for that series on HBO, for example. Every single episode, I was riveted. I was standing up, I'm crying, I'm laughing, I'm clapping. And when a television show can do that, it's also the content of the show, but it's the acting and the performance. I'm just grateful so that I'm not so jaded. I do see those crown molding moments more so than not. Don't get me wrong, but who am I to judge? Unless we're, we approach things and meet things where we are. Everybody's on their journey. And so sometimes it's glaringly obvious that things will need more work or, whatever it needs. But as I get older, I realize they don't need me to do it. So create, enjoy, have a good time,
I love that you were so influenced by a TV show.
Oh, you got to see that show.
I wrote it down.
It sounds really good.
Lovecraft.
Where has the most unexpected source of inspiration come from? Have you ever been watching something, some trashy reality show, and been like, wow, that was really interesting. I'm going to use that in the future.
I find a lot of inspiration, of course, we're always on our devices. Some memes are the best generative. Like, who the heck makes these things? In like in like 2 hours, there will be widely circulated memes on something that just happened with great
Uh-huh.
graphics and artwork. And I collect them. I collect them on Instagram. I collect them on Facebook. I collect videos because it's such an overload. I just have to have somewhere to go. And so I do draw, and I do it with Spotify with songs. I make playlists and stuff because I think if not now, I can go back to it. So those are all generative places for me, all digital. Uh, Copious amounts of stuff to just experience now. So I just try to keep up with it. But that meme thing I do really wonder who's doing that.
Yeah.
Remember like 10
I
years
feel like
ago or
every
20 years ago, it used to be the stay calm. You remember like keep
Mhm.
calm, whatever that thing was. But now it's like magnificent artwork and all kind of stuff. And I just am blown away. Sorry.
It's all right. I think that's
I love
awesome.
that. I love that. I mean, that's like the art of the times, each generation, each like year has its thing. I love that. I love that memes are your inspiration.
I guess it is. I mean, I don't know where else I'm spending most of my time collecting stuff. And then when I go and look at how I'm devising, yeah, I go there. I look at all the places where I save stuff. As long as I feel like I'm tricking myself into doing something, that I'm all in. So all of those are me saying, oh yeah, snag that for later. Snag it, snag it. It's just called collecting research, I guess, in another world.
In this world, the
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. So
yes.
before we jump to our final segment, I want to ask, in what ways has being involved in the arts impacted other areas of your life?
Hmm.
I feel like you've made art a lifestyle and not just a thing you do for works. Might be hard to separate art from the other
Do you
areas
see
of
its
your life.
influence elsewhere?
It used to be actually. Well, I actually see it in my nieces and nephews. I absolutely do. I've always extended them opportunities to present and perform. Several of them will be in Seen and Heard actually. And they're getting older, so it is beautiful to see that. My oldest niece, one of my oldest nieces is a professional dancer now, and I remember when I was in graduate school and I brought her backstage when I was doing Hamlet, and uh and planting the same seeds that my mother planted with me. My sister had a part in it too, but auntie really did. So it's just wonderful because she's a professionally trained dancer now, and she walks in that light because that was been our family. So I like to think that I did something with that. Uh, I used to have lines blurred a whole lot, but I met my husband a few years ago, so that changed things. Uh, I still get to be this crazy theater woman, but I think I've learned how to turn it off and experience other things. Not because he ever would want me to, but because my interests don't have to be so completely consumed in the same way. If I was left to my own devices, I would let it consume me every time. But there's other things to experience as well. So it's not. Ask me this 7 years ago, I would have said there is no blurred line, lady. In theater all the time, but not anymore.
Is your husband artsy at all?
Oh, he appreciates art. He appreciates uh, a good story. He's one of those people. Oh my gosh! Like I'm a naive person at the end of the day. I don't like scary movies. I'm very gullible about certain things. And I have friends and family that love to pull my leg all the time. I'm always getting pulled because I believe people. I think they're being truthful and they're always pulling my leg. And he's one of those that can see like a storyline like instantly. Like you'll watch it for 30 seconds. He's like, oh. I'm like, what are you talking about? She just opened the door. And he's just like, no, blah, 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 blah. So So he's very intelligent. He loves a good story. He's very much in the anime, trying to get me to go in that route because he's trying to explain to me the sophistication of the story. But I'm not quite there yet. So. I like to watch mindless things. Anyway, I don't even remember what the question was.
If your husband was
Oh,
Archie.
are we talking about him? No.
That's all we need to say about him. This is the Kashi show.
That's what it's going to say. That's the clip. Is he Archie? Nope.
He's a writer. He is a writer. And so I guess I should expand that out because he's going to listen to this and be very upset with me.
He'll be fine. He's fine.
Okay.
All right. So speaking of stories, can you tell us a good story or two or 5 or 10?
A good story about what?
Any
in theater, any fun war stories or the best theater moment you've ever had in your life, or how you went to school?
Yeah,
with
any of those
Tupac,
good gems.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. Yes, I did go to school with Tupac Shakur, elementary school. Before, it seems like his origin story sometimes starts around Baltimore, but before he moved to Baltimore, he used to live in New York City. And when we were in elementary school together, I can't remember the grade, I think it was fourth and fifth grade. Tupac, myself, and my sister, we lived in Brooklyn. So we used to, again, remember I told you, ride the trains. I wasn't going from Queens to Manhattan. At that time, I was going from Brooklyn to Manhattan, and we would ride the trains together to and from school. And our school was a very small school. It was called the Lower East Side International Community School. And when I say it was very small, it's like the 4 of us in these boxes was like 3rd grade. And we would have 3rd and 4th grade in one classroom, 5th and 6th in one classroom, 7th and 8th. And a lot of the students that went to that school, their parents were community activists, actively involved in the Black Nationalist Party in the early 70s. And we're talking like the late 70s, early 80s, when maybe like around 1980, 81, when Tupac and I went to school together. So we knew each other. Because some people say, I went to elementary school with so-and-so, but it's like a school with 1,200 kids. But that wasn't our school. It was very small, and we did know him well, to the point where he became famous years later. My sister and I remember it was in the 90s when he started to make waves. One day we were looking at each other and said, that Tupac? Because he was on TV and stuff like with Dr. Dre. We're like, is that? But I tell you this, the person he was and who he became with that fiery passion and rhetoric and that voice, speaking his truth, is who he always was. That was not an act. And that's how me and Crystal knew that was him, especially, and also the name and those eyelashes, those eyes. We knew that was Pac. But it was just like, yeah, there was never a front there. He was always that wild. He was always had that potential to pop off. I remember one time we were riding a train home, and my sister was there. I remember, she can attest, that he started mouthing off at a cop that was just riding in the car. And the cop was like, you got a chip on your shoulder. And he was like, yeah, I got a chip. Why don't you knock it off? Why don't you knock it off? And then we had to grab him and take him away from the cop. But it's just like, that was always who he was, good, bad, or ugly. So yes, I did grow up with Tupac. When you grow up in New York City, as I did in the days of the early hip hop, I know a lot of people. I went to school with a lot of hip hop folks, but that's another story for another time. The one story that I will share very quickly of that, because when you said tell a story, I was like, oh, I got lots of stories. You want to hear a theater story? I remember not long, while I was still a Lehigh student, so this will be relevant. It was maybe the following semester after I had done my initial acting debut. Oh no, it was a whole year. I remember now. I had a few acting credits under my belt. I was percolating in the Department of Theater. The small theater community had started to know who I was. I knew my peers. I was making friends. And the Department of Theater used to participate in the ACTF Irene Ryan acting competitions for Region 2. And it's just like a regional competition where different schools are invited to send students forward to compete in the scene and monologue. And so a couple of us were competing in it. And Pam Pepper, again, the name, was taking us up there. And I think we went to Ithaca. We went up in New York somewhere. I can't remember the school. And I was new to all of this. I wasn't the most disciplined student still, even though I started getting those A's in classes. And I procrastinated to the last minute trying to find a scene and a monologue. I found one the day before we were supposed to get in the car to go up there. And Casper Lassiter, shout out to Casper, my scene partner, and I learned our lines in the car on the way up there. How do you rehearse in a car? It was just craziness in Pam's car. It was all a fun experience. And then we did the competition and I started winning. Y'all. Like it was like 80 people. And then next round, it was like 60 people made that round. And then it was like 30 people made that round. And then it was down to 18 people. Kashi was still going. So it was a phenomenon. Everybody was surprised. My friends got knocked out of other rounds. And then people like, Kashi, go, Kashi, go, Kashi and Casper, with this scene that we rehearsed in the car. And it was the second to last. It was the semifinals. And mind you, everyone that competed, as they get knocked out of rounds, the audiences become bigger. People want to watch and see who's still in it. And we were in the semifinals, and Casper and I were doing our scene, and people were eating it alive to the point where, you have to hold for audiences. Like the scene was an emotional scene full of it was very soapy, very, we were really invested, and we were going for it, and we're screaming and yelling and going. And then it was over and the entire space just jumped up to their feet. This was semifinals. And Casper and I were backstage. And we hugged. And we held each other for so long. Our hearts were going so fast. It was so palpable, that moment, that it can bring me to tears almost 30 years later to think about it. Just I hope conveys just how powerful it was. And I will never forget it, because in that moment, that's when I knew I was going to do this for the rest of my life. In that very moment. Now, the story also goes on that we went to the final round, and I got disqualified at the last minute. So that is also a part of my story. Because it was the biggest audience ever. And everybody laughed, and we held 1 second or two too long. And right when I was going to turn, because it was very specific with the rules, they say you have to say thank you to end it. And right when I was going to turn to say thank you, they said time. And everyone screamed and yelled, no, no. So I will never know what it could have been. And for a long time, I felt so sad about it. But as I got older and moved away from that experience, I realized the gift wasn't winning that. The gift was the day before. It was that moment with Casper. That's my story.
Oh my
That's
God.
so beautiful. That's such
phenomenal.
a beautiful story.
Right? I'm all crying.
I know.
I want to go. Yeah, I've never conveyed it in that. I've never fully. It's funny what age can do to help you see things a little bit better. Theater, it's a gift.
I'll help lighten the mood for a quick second. I know we're getting ready.
Are you gonna rap, Matt?
Up.
Are you gonna do a rap?
Maybe. I almost sent Bailey like a beat, because I was pushing you yesterday about freestyling, and I was like, I'm gonna get you to freestyle. I don't even know if you do.
I do. That's the one thing I do.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
I was so inspired that I wrote out a little thing last night, and my girlfriend cleaned it up for me. But if you want to freestyle, I mean, now I've never rapped. This might just become a poetry reading.
Oh, I love this.
Do you want to freestyle though? You should freestyle first.
I want to hear what you got.
All right. All right, here we go. If nothing else, this will make the blooper reel, right? Okay. I was trying to music this morning too, but I couldn't figure it out. So I was like, all right, no music. I'm just doing it. All right, here we go. Oh man, maybe ready. Now I'm all nervous. I'm sweating. Okay, here we go. This is Sitting Ovation, where we come to meet. If you like what you hear, get up on your feet. Brought to you by Lehigh, the Department of Theater. Joining us today is the chair. Come and meet her. Kashi Johnson is her name. Yeah, her game is on fire. You know she's always trying to teach and inspire. Woo! While Kashi is flashy and bringing the heat, listen while I introduce the rest of the fleet. Here's Elizabeth Miller. I call her E-Lizzie. Calling Q so fast it'll make you dizzy. Coming up next is this rad girl, Bailey. You know that she be teaching all the kids on the daily. Paints and props and paints. She makes it all look good by opening date.
Yes.
Lastly, there's me. Yeah, your ATD. I help build other sets in the machine shop, you see. Now, you know the whole crew, but before I stop, make sure you follow us on the social spots.
Hey, make sure you follow us on the social spots. No, making it hot. Yes, that was wonderful, Matt.
Holy shit!
That is so impressive.
That is amazing.
He did a whole verse.
He says nothing the whole podcast, and all of a sudden he comes out with that.
Hard. I think I see a theme emerging where Matt has to dabble in whatever the visiting speaker does. I think Matt has to try his hand at it. That was phenomenal, my friend. What did you discover about writing your verse? What did you learn? Is it easy?
It was interesting because I had some inspiration. We had chatted earlier that day, and for whatever reason, I don't know if you know, Harry Mack is a freestyle rapper. I've seen him on YouTube a couple times, and for whatever reason, I've been hearing all these like freestyle raps in the last couple of days, and we talked, and I was like, it's so cool how fast they do it, how well they do it, and it's just like picking out words that rhyme, but how do you connect those words? Just because you have two words that rhyme doesn't mean you're gonna make a thought happen. I had some inspiration. I had some thoughts. The feet with Ovation was a play on the sitting ovation, the standing ovation, right? So get up on your feet.
Yeah, the wordplay.
And then trying to rhyme everybody's names. I've never called Elizabeth E-Lizzie in my life.
I was like, you did hip hop though, because you rep your crew. You understand? Like you did like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5. They didn't just get up there and just say themselves. They got to tell you who's on stage with them. Everybody, you're all together. It was wonderful. You did a good job. You really did.
Oh, thank you so much. Cheryl deserves some credit too. She is super talented. She's a singer, actor. I wrote down my initial thoughts and she went through and she was like, she cleaned it all up and added and made it flow a whole lot nicer. But I'm glad I did that. It was actually a lot of fun.
The next step is you just got to do it to the beat.
Right. And I was trying this morning. I was there for like an hour trying to find beats I could do it to. And there were times I'd make it sound really good, but then I couldn't reproduce it. And I was like, all right, so I'm not gonna...
If you want to work on it, Matt, and produce something that the podcast can use, we can do that in the off because that's what I do. I help people learn how to flow.
I'm sold. Let's do it.
Act like you know 12.1.
What we're witnessing right now is that inspiration that you set forth yesterday in our tiny and possibly before that, Matt. I don't want to, assume anything, but I mean, overnight you created this amazing thing based out of this one seed that was planted. I think that's
right. We talked for 15 minutes yesterday, and I wanted to write a rap after that.
Testimony. Good. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
But if you get signed to any agency, I want some money. Okay, no.
Understood. 10%. You got it.
Okay, so we're going to wrap things up in just a moment. Any parting words of wisdom for our listeners?
Be safe and wear a mask. Let's get out of this faster than we got into it. Let's just be safe and take care of each other. This winter is going to be rough. And I just want to be back in my dark theater as soon as possible, selfishly, but just personally, we can't be diligent enough.
Amen to that.
Amen. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much. There's music. We'll edit me out later. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you had as much fun as we did today. Thank you, Kashi, for being with us, and thank you to the Lehigh and thank you to Lehigh University Department of Theater for sponsoring this podcast.
Our next show will be Theater XYZ on December 2nd, a podcast with 3 generations talking about different issues occurring in the world of theater and beyond.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at LU Theater. That's theater ending with an RE at LU Theater Podcast Series. You can find us on YouTube at Lehigh University Department of Theater, and on Spotify, just search Sitting Ovation. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Oh, you ended the jam.
Sorry.
That was